600 million copies sold. The best-selling book series in history. Tolkien's not even close.
Because Tolkien created the entire genre. Without Lord of the Rings, there is no Harry Potter. You're comparing the foundation to a building on top of it.
A building that more people actually visit. More people have read Harry Potter than Lord of the Rings. That's just a fact.
Popularity doesn't equal quality. McDonald's sells billions of burgers. That doesn't make it better than a Michelin star restaurant.
Did you just compare Harry Potter to McDonald's?
I'm saying mass appeal doesn't equal literary merit. And Lord of the Rings has both literary depth and massive sales.
292 million copies. That's half of what Harry Potter sold.
Across 70 decades without modern marketing or the internet, Tolkien published in 1954 when books spread by word of mouth.
And Rowling published in the internet age and dominated it. She understood her moment and created a global phenomenon. By writing accessible children's books, Tolkien created literature. There's a difference. Accessible? Harry Potter got an entire generation reading. Teachers worldwide credit it with reversing literacy decline.
Because kids could actually finish it. Lord of the Rings requires patience, attention, and intellectual engagement.
So you're saying it's better because it's harder to read?
I'm saying it's deeper. Tolkien created 14 functional languages. He built a world with thousands of years of detailed history.
And Rowling built a world people actually want to live in. Universal Studios makes over $1 billion a year from the Wizarding World.
Because it's in Orlando and people can actually get there. Middle-earth is fictional.
They're both fictional, but Harry Potter's world feels more accessible because it's hidden in our world. Platform 9 3/4, Diagon Alley. It feels like we could find it. That's clever contemporary fantasy. But Tolkien, he created a complete secondary reality. Different geological ages, complete mythologies. The Silmarillion details the creation of the world, which nobody reads except hardcore fans.
That's not true.
When's the last time someone told you, I just finished the Silmarillion and loved it? It's complex. It
requires dedication. Not everything needs to be easy.
And not everything needs to be homework. Harry Potter lets you enjoy fantasy without needing a linguistics degree.
Tolkien was a linguistics professor. That's what makes his work scholarly and legitimate. He brought academic rigor to fantasy.
And Rowling brought joy to millions of children who'd never read a full book before. Which matters more?
Literary quality matters. Lord of the Rings is taught in universities. It appears on greatest novels of the 20th century lists.
Harry Potter is taught in schools too, and it's used to teach ethics, social justice, themes of prejudice and authoritarianism.
In elementary schools, Lord of the Rings is studied in comparative literature and medieval studies program.
Because Tolkien wrote it like a medieval epic, some people find that intimidating.
Some people find reading intimidating. That doesn't mean we dumb everything down.
Harry Potter isn't dumbed down, it's sophisticated storytelling that grows with its readers. The first book is children's literature, the last book is young adult fiction dealing with death and sacrifice.
And Lord of the Rings deals with the corruption of power, mortality versus immortality, industrialization destroying nature, timeless themes.
Harry Potter deals with those too. Voldemort's quest for immortality, the Ministry of Magic becoming authoritarian, pure blood ideology as racism analogue.
Surface level compared to Tolkien's depth. The Ring as ultimate corruption. The Hobbits as small people changing history. The passing of the Third Age.
You're literally describing plot points. Harry as the chosen one who chooses sacrifice, the power of love over dark magic, the importance of choices over destiny.
Packaged for children. Tolkien wrote for adults and created something timeless.
Tolkien wrote The Hobbit for his children, then wrote Lord of the Rings as a sequel.
And it became something far greater, academic, scholarly. The film trilogy won 17 Oscars.
The Harry Potter films made $7.7 billion.
Box office isn't quality.
Return of the King made $1.14 billion. Deathly Hallows Part 2 made $1.34 billion. Harry Potter won the box office too.
But Return of the King swept the Oscars. 11 wins out of 11 nominations, tied for most Oscars ever for a single film.
And the Harry Potter films were nominated for 12 Oscars across the series. They just didn't win because the Academy has a bias against fantasy.
Or because Lord of the Rings achieved cinematic greatness that demanded recognition.
Both film series were incredible, but Harry Potter reached more people. The midnight release parties, the phenomena around each book launch.
Marketing.
Community. People dressed as characters, camped outside bookstores, celebrated together. That's genuine cultural impact.
Lord of the Rings created an entire genre that every fantasy work since has borrowed from. That's cultural impact.
I'm not denying Tolkien's influence, he's foundational. But Harry Potter made fantasy accessible to everyone.
By simplifying it.
By making it relatable. Harry's not some mythical chosen hero. He's a kid dealing with homework and puberty and grief. People see themselves in him.
Frodo's not mythical either. He's a reluctant hero who didn't want the burden of the ring. That's relatable.
Frodo's a hobbit carrying a magic ring to a volcano in a fancy world. Harry's a kid who discovers he's special. One's easier to connect with.
One requires imagination. The other is contemporary wish fulfillment.
What's wrong with wish fulfillment? Kids dreaming they might get a Hogwarts letter, that there's magic in the world, that's powerful.
And adults dreaming of being part of a fellowship fighting ultimate evil, that's powerful too. Different audiences, different approaches.
Except Harry Potter reaches both children and adults. 7 books that grow with you.
7 books versus a trilogy plus The Hobbit, plus the Silmarillion, plus all the posthumous work. Tolkien created an entire mythology.
That most people haven't read. I'm talking about cultural penetration.
I'm talking about literary achievement. Tolkien created languages, actual functional languages with grammar and syntax.
Which is incredibly impressive academically, but it doesn't make the story better for readers.
It makes the world more real, more lived in, more authentic.
And Harry Potter's world feels real because we can imagine it existing alongside ours. The Ministry of Magic is in London. Hogwarts is somewhere in Scotland. That groundedness makes it accessible.
Accessibility again. You keep coming back to that.
Because it matters. Fantasy shouldn't be gatekept by complexity. It should welcome everyone.
And Tolkien does welcome everyone, but he respects his readers enough to challenge them.
Rowling respects her readers too. She built a complete magical system, detailed histories of the wizarding world, intricate plots across 7 books.
Built on Tolkien's template. The Dark Lord, the Prophecy, the Chosen One, the Fellowship of Friends.
Those are universal fantasy tropes. You can't credit Tolkien with inventing the hero's journey.
Oh, but he modernized it for fantasy literature. He created the template everyone uses.
And Rowling showed how to make that template work for a massive global audience. Both are achievements.
One created the genre, one succeeded within it.
One influenced writers, one influenced readers. Both matter.
Which brings us back to the original question, who's supreme?
Final arguments. Let's actually end this properly.
With pleasure.
Harry Potter is the greatest fantasy achievement because it accomplished what no other series has done. It made 600 million people around the world fall in love with reading. It reversed literacy decline in multiple countries, created unprecedented social phenomena around book releases with midnight parties and global celebrations, and built a cultural empire worth billions. $7.7 billion in box office revenue, over $1 billion annually from theme parks. But more than the numbers, Harry Potter made magic accessible and relatable by grounding magic in the familiar world of school, friendship, and growing up. It got children to voluntarily read 700-page books. It taught themes of love, sacrifice, prejudice, and authoritarianism through entertaining storytelling. Platform 9 3/4 exists in King's Cross Station. Hogwarts feels like it could be somewhere in Scotland. That accessibility created a generation of readers and proved that fantasy could be for everyone, not just people willing to wade through complex lore and invented languages. That's cultural supremacy. That's the greatest fantasy achievement.
The Lord of the Rings is the greatest fantasy achievement because it created the entire modern fantasy genre from scratch. Tolkien didn't just write a story, he built a complete secondary world with 14 functional languages, complete with grammar and syntax, thousands of years of detailed history across multiple ages, and mythological depth unmatched in modern literature. He brought scholarly rigor and academic legitimacy to fantasy. The trilogy appears on greatest novels of the 20th century lists, not just greatest fantasy lists. It won 17 academic awards, with Return of the King winning 11 out of 11 nominations. It influenced every fantasy work that followed, including Harry Potter, which couldn't exist without Tolkien's foundation. 292 million copies sold across 70 years without internet marketing proves lasting universal appeal. It's studied in comparative literature and medieval studies programs worldwide. It's timeless mythology that explores universal themes of power corrupting absolutely, mortality versus immortality, and small, ordinary people changing the course of history. Without Tolkien, there is no modern fantasy genre as we know it. That's not just supremacy, that's being the foundation itself.
So it's popularity versus influence.
Accessibility versus literary merit.
600 million readers versus creating the genre.
Exactly, and creating the genre is more important.
Is it? If nobody reads the genre-defining work because it's too intimidating, does that matter more than 600 million people discovering fantasy through an accessible entry point?
People do read Lord of the Rings. 292 million people.
Over 70 years, Harry Potter did 600 million in less than 20.
Different eras, different contexts. You can't compare them directly.
You just said Tolkien created the foundation Harry Potter built on, so you're acknowledging they're connected.
Connected, yes, but the foundation matters more than what's built on it.
Does it? Without buildings, foundations serve no purpose. Without readers, literature serves no purpose.
That's actually a fair philosophical point.
Thank you.
But Harry Potter's readers exist because Tolkien made fantasy legitimate and possible.
And Tolkien's continued relevance exists partly because Harry Potter brought millions of new readers to fantasy who then discovered his work.
Are you giving Harry Potter credit for Lord of the Rings sale?
I'm saying they lifted each other. The Harry Potter generation discovered Tolkien. That's cultural symbiosis.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
Both works made fantasy bigger, just in different ways.
Tolkien made it legitimate. Rowling made it massive.
Both essential, both supreme in different measures.
But we're supposed to pick one.
Based on what criteria? Academic achievement, Tolkien wins. Commercial success, Harry Potter wins. Cultural impact? Both changed culture. Tolkien influenced how fantasy is written. Harry Potter influenced how fantasy is read.
Writers versus readers.
Creation versus consumption.
And here's what frustrates me about this debate. I love both series for completely different reasons.
Same. I love Harry Potter for making me fall in love with reading. I love Lord of the Rings for showing me how deep fantasy could go.
Different purposes, different audiences, different kinds of greatness.
So maybe there's no answer to who's supreme.
There's definitely an answer. It's Lord of the Rings.
It's absolutely Harry Potter.
You just said there's no answer.
I changed my mind. 600 million copies.
Created the entire genre.
Got a generation reading.
17 Oscars.
292 million copies without internet marketing.
14 functional languages.
And we're back to the circular argument we always have.
Because we're measuring different things and pretending they're comparable.
Most popular fantasy versus most important fantasy.
Commercial success versus literary achievement,
The one that brought readers to fantasy.
versus the one that created fantasy for them to come to.
Both statements are true. Both matter.
But only one created the template the other followed.
And only one proved the template could reach 600 million people.
This is impossible to resolve,
Because they're both right answers to slightly different questions.
which is the most unsatisfying conclusion to a debate ever.
Except we both know our actual positions haven't changed at all.
Not even slightly. Lord of the Rings is still supreme.
Harry Potter is demonstrably more supreme.
Two fantasy series that changed everything in completely different ways.
And we'll still be arguing about which one did it better in 20 years.